Larry, can you remember an early incident where you encountered the issue of class?
Well, I had a really hard time remembering something. Last time when we talked, I couldn't even think of it, but on the way back home, I remembered what I think might be my first incident, or one of the first incidents at least. And that was, I was just getting out of junior high school and trying to figure out where to go to high school. And our family sort of lived right on the line between two high schools. And believe it or not, one of the high schools was called Central, and the other high school is called East. And there's a third high school also, which wasn't called West, which makes no sense. But it was called something completely different. I never did figure out where that name came from. Anyways, the people that went to Central were mostly lower income, people who lived in the middle of the city. And then over on the east side, that was the upscale side. And I didn't think too much about it at the time. And my best friend, who lived just a few doors down from me, decided to go to East. And so I figured, well, I'll go to East too. And it was a little bit closer. I could actually walk to the high school, whereas Central was a little bit of a longer walk. And our neighborhood was kind of a mix. It was some middle-class people, some working-class people. I don't think there were real low-income folks there, but definitely a mix between middle and working class. And so I got to the high school, and it was fine. But at some point in time, people who weren't in the high school, and sometimes people who were in the high school, instead of giving the high school its regular name, which was the Greyhounds, we were called the East High School Cake Eaters. And I didn't know for sure at the beginning what that meant, but I soon found out, and of course it refers to Marie Antoinette talking about those poor people, well, let them eat cake like Marie Antoinette could do. And it was really a confusing thing for me because I certainly didn't see myself as a wealthy person from a wealthy family, or even middle class for that matter. We were, like I said, we were sort of on the edge. The neighborhood was kind of half working class, half middle class. And I think our family was in that category too. So it was a really confusing time for me for a little while because it didn't make sense to me that I would fall into the category of being a cake eater, and yet people kept calling us that. So it seemed like I had to either own it or decide not to own it. And I think at that time I decided not to own it. But probably since then, certainly compared to the other high school, we probably to some extent deserve the title. So that was an early experience with class and classism. Just to move along from there, I'll tell you about a real recent issue of class and classism. And that's the flyer that I passed out. It's called Don't Leave Us Out. And it's about a situation just about a week ago where an organization had this event that they were calling Building Common Ground, which meant that they wanted a lot of people from hopefully, at least it sounded like, a lot of people from a lot of different experiences. And I got a flyer about it, and it looked good. And then I looked at the cost, and for people that were not members of the group, and we're not a member of that group, it was $125 just to come for a lunch, and a bunch, a speaker, some, la-di-da guy from Harvard, and then some workshops. It just seemed way overpriced, and just the whole idea of trying to have a situation where you really want a lot of people from different backgrounds and experiences to be there, and then charging that much just didn't make sense to me. It just seemed really contradictory, really inappropriate, really Trying to think of the right word, but anyways, hypocritical probably is the right word, actually. And there are a couple other things about it. You know, most of the people that were giving the workshops had letters after their name, like PhD or MD or, you know, MA or some other set of letters like that. And just having the event at Colby College, Colby is not exactly your average location where anybody could feel comfortable. It certainly felt, you know, it is really a city on the hill, which some colleges are, and Colby more than most, actually, because of its location, really is a city on a hill in Waterville. So that didn't seem like a very good way of encouraging people, making lower income people feel welcome to actually come to an event like that. And so I put together a little flyer, and I went there and passed out about 100 flyers to people that came to the conference and some of the people I knew. So in general, they were at least tolerant, if not friendly about it, and some people agreed with it. And actually, the speaker, the guy from Harvard, came over and took a flyer and read it and said, well, this is about what I'm going to talk about today. So I didn't stay for the talk because I didn't pay the price, but maybe he talked about that stuff there too. Who knows?
What was in your notice or your flyer?
Flyer, well, it talks about building common ground. It's titled "Don't Leave Us Out," and it talks about building common ground. And essentially, I said that if you want to build common ground, you got to get people from a lot of different backgrounds in the same room together. And if you charge too much and make them feel unwelcome or not very comfortable in the surroundings, they ain't going to be there. Simple as that. And so I just said, you know, we need to have a sliding scale. You need, I didn't talk about Colby as a location or people with letters after their names, but I mentioned there are other, you know, parts of the situation that I thought, you know, didn't make a lot of people feel welcome. And that if you really want to solve problems, you've got to have people who experience the problems firsthand as a large part of the solution. So if you're talking about things like poverty, and poverty was mentioned, you know, you don't want to have a bunch of middle-class people figuring out how to solve poverty. You want to have people who experience poverty taking a lot of the leadership and figuring out how to end poverty, because otherwise it ain't going to end, or at least it's not going to end in a way that makes the people who are experience poverty feeling that the problem has been solved. So that's my most recent experience.